Thank you, Leader. I can offer apologies for absence this morning from Councillor Ivan Henderson, the leader of the Labour Group, and Councillor Colin Winfield, the leader of the Holland-on-Sea Group.
Thank you for that, and I don't think we've got any other apologies. Quick glance around the room. Minutes of the last meeting are page 120 of the agenda. Can I sign those as to an accurate record? It's good because I've already signed them. Declarations of interest, item 3, members are invited to declare any disclosable pecuniary.
I thought you were going to ask for matters of matters arising from those minutes, but you don't. No, I just wondered because item C on the resolve on page 17, I did bring up about the coronation and whether there'll be any additional funds available for local people via councillors like we did before. And you did answer, and you did indicate that you could be looking at something like that. Have you looked at it? Thank you.
I am. Mike has also contacted me about that. Councillor Bush, sorry. So I am, and I'll get something out shortly on that. Good point. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Remind me on that, Ian. And yes. And, yeah. Okay, thanks for that. What I'll do is I'll shift the agenda around a little bit. I've got a petition item 6 and a petition item 7. I've then got 2 separate and separated items on the beach hut strategy. Item 10, which is basically considering the response of the recommendations of the Council's review, Resources and Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I've got my teeth in. And then item 16, which is the actual strategy itself. So what I'll do is I'll take the item 6 and item 7, and then I'll take item 10 and then item 16. So we'll go beach hut. So then if there's people that have just come to talk about the beach hut or listen to the beach hut, they're free to not have to endure the entire meeting, although I'm sure they'd love to listen to what we're also doing. So without further ado, announcements by the leader of the council. I have got none on this occasion. Announcements by cabinet members. I don't think we've got any today. Which takes me into A1, item 6 on page 21 of your agendas, which is a petition on green space development. We had an e-petition from Caroline Say. I don't think is here today. If you are,
Leader, yes, I can confirm we invited Caroline Say to attend, but she's actually out of the country at the moment, so she can't be here today.
So, Carlo, I'll go over to you on this one.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll keep it brief. We consider the petition very similar to this, the meeting before last, and the response is still the same. This is part of an ongoing decision that was taken back in July to promote 69 sites, and no decision has been made on any of them, but we do note the contents of the petition. Thank you.
Moving that as a recommendation. Yeah. Thank you. I'll take a second. Jeff, thank you. We have to agree that. Yeah. Okay, that is agreed. Thank you. So the next item is item 7, which is a petition on the reinstatement of toilets on Middle Promenade below Connaught Gardens East, Clacton-on-Sea. That's on page 29 on your agendas. This was an e-petition submitted by Colin Underwood and 41 signatures. And Mr. Underwood, I believe, is here today. So I'm not sure where we're going to have Mr. Underwood. Oh yeah, there's a
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this matter. It's been a long-standing issue in my mind since 2008 or earlier, when the old toilets were demolished. And I understand the reason why, but there's still a need for toilets in that area. And with a cafe around the corner, with people drinking and lots of people on the beach in the summer, there is an absolute need. I know there are toilets up at St Albans and at Lyndhurst Road, but imagine if you're a mother of young children who want to go to the toilet in the summer, walking along to the point, up the slope and crossing a very busy road with young children desperate to go to the toilet. That's not practical. That's not a runner, I'm afraid. And similarly, to walk for 15 minutes along to St Albans, that's not right either. There should be toilets in that vicinity, especially as there is a cafe. A lot of people come down in the summer. Now, I've read your report, which was strong on reasons for not doing anything, but didn't actually address the problem. I mean, how are you going to deal with the problem of people urinating on the beach, in the cliffs? I mean, what is your proposal? I wait to hear. And if you want further evidence, you should talk to the leaseholder of the Beaches Cafe, who constantly has problems with people coming off the beach, not to buy anything, but just to use the inadequate toilets in the cafe. They're not public toilets, they're staff toilets, and pretty inadequate at that. But that doesn't mean it's not necessary. And also, it might be that perhaps some temporary toilets in the summer might be provided to temporarily address the problem. It's mainly a summer problem. That really is all I have to say initially. Okay, thank you.
This, I think, can be led on by Councillor Talbot.
Thank you, Leader. I must say I have sympathy with what's being proposed, but the fact of the matter is that at this moment in time, this council is looking at trying wherever possible to maintain as much as possible of existing services, but contracting them, if possible, to try and save money. You know, we're looking at things we're doing to save money. We're not looking for things where we'll be spending money. I do appreciate the sentiment in the proposer, the petitioner, but the fact is we just cannot afford to breach our general policy of trying to introduce nothing that's new that's going to cost money at this moment in time. We just don't have that money to spend. Our government grant reduces. I won't go into the financial side of it. That's not really my issue. But the issue is about the toilets. I'd remind the petitioner and everybody else here that the provision of public toilets is a discretionary service. We're not actually obliged to provide any. And I know the big example that's always given by people is that a place the size of Manchester has one public toilet. Now, we aren't Manchester by any means. And not only that, we're a holiday area. We're an area where we have to try and make provision for the benefit of our tourists. And clearly that's one of the things in the mind of the petitioner. And I know the nearest toilet is 500 yards away. That's a fair old trot, as he says. But the fact is that we just cannot provide facilities everywhere where somebody thinks they might be needed. This was demolished a long time ago, simply because it was a dilapidated state at that time and it was felt the remaining facilities were sufficient. So I'm sorry to say, on behalf of the Cabinet Leader, that I would recommend that apart from noting this petition and perhaps bearing it in mind if there is an opportunity at any time in the future to expand the service, that this particular toilet could be reconsidered. But at this moment in time, I would ask the Cabinet to note the petition, thank him for the submission of it, but unfortunately report that we are unable to comply with the request. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor Talbot. That's removed as a recommendation. Did we get a seconder for that? Yeah, Alex. Any comments from anyone? Terry.
Just one comment. I'm sure that Manchester doesn't hold that up as a badge of honour to say we've only got one public urinal. And I'm pretty sure that they arranged that, like abroad, that restaurants in holiday places have an obligation when they get planning permission to open their doors to people to using them. But there seems to be a reluctance here. But I'm sure that the same questions are asked at Manchester as they asked here. And I have complete sympathy for the resident, because living in an area like ours, when we found that our toilet was shut a few years ago, that people wasn't even going to the town, the main centre in Frinton-on-Sea, because they couldn't guarantee that they could go there, do their shopping and get back in reasonable time to save an embarrassment. And so the town council took the opportunity at a cost. It wasn't sort of given to us. This council charges and it costs us a lot of money, but our residents were over the moon about it because we provided a toilet, and the town, our own residents in the ward, in the town area, pay for that. But as I say, we shouldn't hold it as a badge of honour that we've only got a certain amount of toilets. Something needs to be done in the future. I admit the budget's got to be looked at. It's got to be kept to, because I'm a great advocate of, if you want something put in, you've got to take something out. But then it's the priorities of some people against priorities of others. That's all I would like to say, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Allen. It is a harsh reality that it's very expensive to run public conveniences. We probably have more public conveniences in tendering than any other districts in the country. I'm not aware of any district council that runs more. I'm not aware of any council that runs anywhere near as many as we do. And I suspect we've probably got more public toilets in tendering than the rest of Essex combined. But we have the longest coastline of any district council in the country. We've got a 37 mile, depends how you measure it, coastline. And if we're going to have toilets every half a mile, then that's going to be a lot of toilets just on the coastline, forgetting the rural hinterland and all the towns in the countryside and villages, etc., without giving them any provision at all. So we're never going to be able to cover the whole ground. The idea that Mr. Underwood mentioned of having a temporary mobile toilet is definitely worth consideration going forward, definitely for peak times and holiday seasons. And I think that's one to keep in the barrel, as it were, for the future time. But the sad truth is, it does come down to money, and at the moment we're looking at going the other way. Rather than sort of finding new projects to spend money on, we are looking at other things we can cut back on and save money on. That's the harsh truth of it. That doesn't mean that anything that the petitioner said is wrong or that we fundamentally disagree with. It's just, you made some very good points. It does largely come down to the cost. But we've got a motion there that was moved by Councillor Talbot, seconded by Councillor Porter. Are we happy to agree there? Disagree, thanks. So now I come to the first of the two items on the Beach Hut strategy. The first one is item 10, which is the reference from the Resources and Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I need to declare an interest in it. As Mayor of Frinton and Walton Town Council, we actually have two beach huts that we hire out to our residents only in the town council area. So I should declare an interest in this item. Thank you.
I also need to declare an interest in this because my family own a beach hut.
Alex, are you leading on this one?
Yeah, so obviously this is the overview and scrutiny report, which I think we're just noting and then moving on to the main item where the comments are.
And I happily second that. There's a recommendation on page 170, which I'm assuming you just moved, Councillor Porter, and I'll happily second that the recommendations be noted. And I think we should thank the Resources and Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the piece of work that they've done there. With that, if we agree that, can we agree that? Yeah. I'll then move straight on to item 16, which is the beach strategy itself. And I'll go straight back to you, Alex.
Yeah, so this is the tendering beach hut strategy that we're revisiting in order to modernise and tidy up the beach hut service in general, including obviously we've done a couple of very good consultations on this. The recommendations are actually on page 327 and 328. I don't know if I want to get a seconder on them, and then I'll just speak quickly on it. Yeah, so there's been 2 consultations, and the idea was to modernise the strategy and bring in some changes which would protect the beach hut leaseholders, or sorry, licence holders they are currently. Information on page 333 explains what the benefits of a lease would be, and on 337 what the current licence agreement means, which basically means there's no security with the licence, and also we bring in a new opportunity for businesses on the seafront to run rental businesses, which will be open to all. And overall, it's a very positive strategy, which a lot of work has gone into. So hopefully, I hope Cabinet members approve it.
Are they not working very well? Okay. When you speak next, Alex, if you bring your microphone right forward, I think we'll try that. I think, in a nutshell, we've got the report in front of us. We've had a consultation. We had a pre-consultation. We've had the Opium Scrutiny Committee carrying out a piece of work, a thorough piece of work into it, which is at a public meeting. We've had a situation where people have been buying and selling beach huts without any security of tenure, and selling them for prices, values which would suggest that there was a security of tenure which didn't exist in law. This will clarify that situation initially, and a few people renting out on a very large scale or commercial operation without any kind of regulation or sanction of the council, and this will regularise that. And I think it just tidies up a lot of the aspects of the beach hut rentals that were causing a few issues and concerns, not necessarily just for the beach hut users and owners themselves, but for all of the other residents of the district and users of the beach. So I think this is a really good piece of work. It's a really good strategy. It is something that we will need to look at and review, I think, going forward. Keep an eye on it, make sure that it is working, make sure that there aren't any unforeseen consequences or problems, and if there are, I'm sure people won't hesitate in coming forward to let us know. But I think we could ask the Resources and Services Opium Scrutiny Committee to keep this on their work programme, to have a review of it at an appropriate time in the future when it's settled in a little bit. But this is just agreeing the strategy. All the finer points of it will are decisions to be taken going forward. This is just agreeing the broad strategy. Are there any other comments from anyone? No. Terry.
You say the finer details going forward. When would that? What venue would that be done at, or would it be just in the cabinet?
I mean, listen.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Allen, the recommendation little I on page 328 of the Cabinet agenda sets, if Cabinet approves this recommendation, the proposal is that the licence agreements were changed to leases from the 1st of April 2024 for a term of less than 7 years. And that decision would be made by then the more detailed terms and conditions of that lease would be agreed by the portfolio holder, which means it's an executive decision. So it'd be made by a cabinet member.
It's just that I think that item I, the lease, is the most worrying for all. Every inquiry I get and phone call I get about is the lease, and it's frightening the people out there. So if you are a mind to do it, then you need to get the information out there and either to ease their minds or, you know, put them straight, because that is the main thing that's concerning the lease. Because beach huts are people local, as you know, if you live in a coastal town, they're very precious, not only to the people that haven't got them, also especially to the people that have got them. So I think you should bear in mind that this is a great concern, this lease, to the members out there. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, can you hear me with this on? I would highly recommend that you read on page 337 what the option would be if licenses remain, because I think there's a confusion over what a license is. Because the current system, the license is clear that if you sell your beach hut, the license comes to an end. So you cannot buy and sell a sited beach hut currently. And if we were to impose the license correctly, there would be a waiting list, which would essentially remove the value of anybody's beach hut entirely. So the lease actually protects it; it doesn't take it away. So the move from licenses to leases is to protect people because of the misunderstanding over licenses.
Chairman, I just really wanted to highlight the consultation exercise that's taken place. On page 329, it talks about how many people engaged with the consultation, which we all know consultations are very historically low numbers, but with this, the pre-consultation exercise produced 2,673 responses. And then when the further consultation was extended until January 23, further 1,507 people responded. So I think there's been claims that the consultation has been flawed and that we have not really done enough to engage with people. Well, the results speak for themselves, really. That is the only point I'd like to make, that, you know, we've bent over backwards to trying to engage with people, and it seems to have succeeded. You know, a consultation response, if you get 400 or 500 responses, is considered very high response. In this case, we got over 4,000 here. Thank you, Jim.
I take on board Councillor Allen's point about making sure that we communicate with great clarity to existing beach hut owners, in particular regarding the change from license to lease, because I think there is quite a lot of misapprehension and or misunderstanding of what is involved, and naturally people will fear the worst. I totally understand and accept that. I think actually this is going to greatly improve the situation for beach hut owners, because they will have that security of tenure. They will have an asset that's genuinely worth proper money, because they'll actually have a lease and the right to assign that lease to someone else, and the right to transfer it, which doesn't exist at the moment. And rather the bottom suddenly falling out the market when someone suddenly challenges it and realizes this, or there's an issue, this does give people that security. So I think going forward it will be better, but we do need to make sure that it's communicated with absolute precision and clarity, what exactly is happening, when it's happening, how it's happening, etc. So I'm confident we can do that. Anything else, anyone? I will. It's been moved by Councillor Porter, seconded by Paul Honeywood. Are we happy to agree the strategy and the recommendations A to J? Thank you. Thank you. Next item on the agenda then is planning. I'll give people a minute to disperse, and I'll move on in a minute to Brightlingsea conservation area. Okay, so on page 35 of our agendas is an item, recommendations on page 36. This is in the capable hands of Councillor Jeff Bray. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Neil. Yes, the next set of conservation area character appraisals. This one is Brightlingsea Hall and All Saints Church. And once again, I have to thank the Planning and Local Plan Policy Making Committee for the work they've done on this. I did attend their meeting. There was a lot of discussion at that meeting, and it was generally very, very positive, which I think is always the case. So I thank them for their work. And I sincerely welcome once again its recommendation to Cabinet that this be published upon public consultation. So reviewing the district's conservation areas, as we said before, is one of the key actions of the Council's heritage strategy, and the progress so far has been exceptional. It says here very good, but I would say exceptional. We're moving at pace. This ensures we have an up-to-date appraisal for each and every conservation area, and will enable residents, developers, planners and our planning committee to understand the key characteristics that make each area special and which need to be preserved and enhanced when making planning applications and determining them. And of course, they'll also enable us to reconsider the boundaries of each area and determine whether any Article 4 directions are needed to provide an extra level of protection or control. Those of you, and I'm sure you've all had a good look at the report that's come in. It's an excellent report. It's well drafted. I need to find out who the photographer is who takes the photographs in there, because they're absolutely stunning. They're really, really good. There's a photo in there of what appears to be a relatively normal house, and he's made it look exciting. So whoever the photographer is, I'm all up for him. The recommendation you can find on page 36, and Chair, I'd like to propose that recommendation as printed. Thank you.
Interesting piece of work. 50-page report with colour photographs to boot, all about a bit of land where nobody lives in an old church. But it is. I'm being facetious. It is, and it does pay reference in there to the fact it is one of the most stunning churches in East Anglia, actually. All Saints Church in Brightlingsea, built on the highest bit of land in the area. It's absolutely magnificent. But it's a planning document. Thank you. I'd like to add my thanks to the local planning policy committee for the work they've done. They've done the hard graft on this, the heavy lifting. Jane.
Yes, the photographs look wonderful. At the moment, it's all covered in scaffolding and everything else, so it doesn't look anything like that. Just to say that the town council were very happy with the report, and especially incorporating the 2 red brick houses into it. So, thank you.
I think there's not much else to say. Go on, Gary, you know you want to say something. No? Oh.
Chairman, I think it's really, really good that, and this is the main focal point coming into Brightlingsea, leaving the glorious ward of Thorrington and going down to Brightlingsea. The first thing you see is the church, and it is amazing, and well done for planning department to doing this document.
Thank you for that, Gary. So anyway, it's moved and seconded. Are we all happy to agree that? It's agreed. So the next one is a design guide supplementary planning document. Jaywick Sands. Again, Jeff.
Thanks, Neil. Wonderful. Once again, the same planning committee, the local plan committee that discussed the last item also discussed this. So I was able to sit alongside, have a listen, and I was even asked for comments, which was good. But again, the general tone of the meeting there was quite positive. We're looking forward, we're moving on. So once again, I thank the Planning Policy and Local Plan Committee for its consideration and constructive comments on the Jaywick Sands Design Guide, which was progressed through the mandatory planning process of public consultation and can now be formally adopted as a supplementary planning document, or SPD as we know them. For many years, property owners, developers and planning officers have needed to grapple with the dilemma of trying to work out what form of development might help to regenerate the area and improve the lives of residents, whilst addressing the flood risk and safety concerns and achieving an appropriate form of development that avoids overlooking and other divine problems. So this guidance will supplement the local plan and should provide, well, it will provide, a helpful and practical template for how to redevelop existing properties and vacant plots, either on a 1-for-1 basis or across a number of plots. It's a big step forward. It gives everybody an idea of what we're looking for in Jaywick. It gives everybody a general feel for what we're trying to achieve. And I note from the Planning Policy and Local Plan Committee that they did ask for the inclusion of an additional part, which is now there, which is the words vigilant separation between Tudor Estate and Village Brooklands and Gardens must be maintained, which I think was a very good point raised by the local plan committee. The visual display, what we mean by that is you don't want a big bright yellow house just off in the distance that stands out for miles. So just again, a little bit of ensuring that everything is done right.
Interesting read. It's interesting how different it is in a way to the previous item, because there's a map in this one from 1895 and there was nothing there, whereas the previous item on Brightlingsea, it was all about its history and its heritage going back hundreds if not thousands of years, so completely different in that respect, and yet lots and lots of challenges that hopefully we can start to ameliorate, if not sort out, through the planning process. And some stark images of the flooding of 53, which was of course 70 years ago, just a few days ago. Yeah, any comments from anyone? Or we just want to agree? Agree. Okay, it's great. Thank you. Okay, so we've done item 10. We are on item 11, which is the scrutiny of cyber security for the council, page 179 of your agendas. Carly, it's over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I circulated my responses to the work done by the Task and Finish group, which set up by the Resources Service Scrutiny Committee. I thank them for their work and what their recommendation had come up. I think I will not dwell too much on it, but my response takes into consideration and gives some option for the council to follow. I just really would like to again state the fact that we are in breach of our own securities policies, but by work in progress, I suppose we're mitigating the risk. It is something that we must all be aware that this practice is not one that's been recommended by the National Cybersecurity Agency, but we are a target, and as a target, you're not just a target for passing by, we are a target for good, and that's just really wanted to highlight the risk. But I hope my responses give some reassurance to members that we are looking to find a solution to address all concerns. And once again, I'd like to thank the Task and Finish group for the work they did. Thank you.
And I'll second that actually, and endorse what you've just said, Carlo, and actually, and in particular, the thanks to the Task and Finish group and to Councillor Clifton for chairing it. Well done. It sounds almost comical to suggest that the Russians are after us, but they are. We are, for some reason, is it the number 2 council in the country, the 3rd in the country for being targeted by cyber attacks, most of which, many of which, some of which, all of which possibly stem from a certain part of the globe, which is Russia, basically. And because we were one of the first councils to agree a motion condemning Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, that's thought to have put us high on their hit list. So, and it literally sounds farcical, doesn't it? That Putin's after us. But the fact is, we saw only a couple of years ago, the NHS brought to its knees because a member of staff, one of the millions who work for the NHS, one member of staff opened an attachment on an email, which turned out to be some sort of bug, virus, whatever, and it brought down the entire NHS IT system for several days. The whole thing came to its knees because one member of staff, and let's face it, none of us want to be that person, do we? Officers or members, we don't want to be the person who unwittingly and we'd all like to think, oh, I wouldn't get caught out by it, but I nearly have done on several occasions, and I think there, but for the grace of God, go any of us. So this is all about mitigating risk. I used the example to Carlo earlier. It's like crossing the road is inherently a dangerous process, but it's a lot more dangerous if you don't look first, isn't it? You know, if you just think, oh, it'll be okay, and I'll just cross the road, chances are you probably will get hit. If you stop and look both ways, you still might get hit, but it's a lot less likely. And what I've been very keen to avoid is for members, you know, on the one hand, we've got to balance that security and integrity and making sure the government don't strike us off their list, which is what they were threatening to do. On the other hand, members going about their day-to-day business as councillors, whether that be a backbench councillor, a cabinet member, the leader, the chairman, a committee chairman, a task and finish chairman, whatever, we need to be able to function in a way that suits us best. And that is different for all of us as well. Perhaps it didn't used to be before IT in the days when we just got the stuff landed on our letterbox through the post. We all function in the same way because there was no alternative. Now, some of us will access emails once a day or once a week or whenever through the tendering laptop or facilities. Some people will do them through their phone. We want to maintain as much access and as much ease of access to all members as possible. And there will be a cost implication to that, quite probably. But there are solutions. So whenever, technology throws up a challenge, throws up a problem, throws up Russians trying to hack you, technology also will throw up a countermeasure that we can try and deploy to mitigate against it. And it may cost us some money, but we need to try and balance those two things and not allow some Russian hacker sitting in a basement somewhere in Moscow to stop us acting and functioning as we want to, as democratically elected members of this organisation. I'll take Ian, and I'll go back to Carlo, and then I'll open it up.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a very quick one is actually in only this week's MJ, which is the Municipal Journal, which is the trade press for local government. It talks about a council which has been hacked. It's taken down their entire system. They're still recovering, and it's cost them 8.4 million. That's the latest of a number. So that's one which is right up to date in terms of issues.
Chairman, there's a story about this Scottish member of Parliament, which very genuine email that came through. One of his staff opened it, and everything, all the information has been now stolen. All private things from his constituents are now in the public domain, and it's a very, very big risk. Only just recently, I received an email from Councillor Viggo Jalmi, which looked absolutely 100% genuine, and of course it wasn't. The bottom line is for us all to be very, very, very vigilant of what we get in our inboxes. You take your guard down, and you give access to people with far worse ulterior motive than the one you've just talked about. And it just really, the bottom line is to just be continuously vigilant. Our IT resilience is as strong as it possibly could think. In fact, sometimes frustratingly too robust, if you like, and it stops normal everyday stuff to actually take place. But better that way than the other. But really, the moral of the story is that for all of us, we got part to play to be very, very vigilant, be very careful what we open when you don't recognise a certain email that you receive.
Go. Okay. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to say this is an excellent piece of work, and it goes all the way back to April last year when the scrutiny chairman sat down with you, the cabinet, the leaders of the cabinet, and you raised this as one of the concerns that we thought would be facing the council. And the scrutiny committee felt that it wasn't something we could do in a day, and so we tasked it to a task and finish group. And thankfully, we had Paul Clifton and his members, and they've produced such a good report, in my opinion, and obviously in your opinion, because you've endorsed most of it verbatim. And I can't disagree with anything that's on there. The only thing that I would like to get some clarity on, perhaps, is item H, where we talked about auto forwarding. Now, I've read your amendment that came out yesterday, and it was unanimous in the committee that the auto forwarding be ceased. And I get the indication from what was being given to us yesterday that that is also the proposed. My concern is that I'm not reading a definitive timeline unless that is the 1st of April. And it says, like, it's just a bit of contrary. Often be requested to explore the alternative in, C, little I, options of a member's portal before final decision can be considered. Is that decision going to be considered before the 1st of April, which is in part of the summary? That's the clarification. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I think it's work in progress. I've tasked officers to start looking into it, and I suppose we have not set a definite time scale for that, but the auto forwarding will definitely cease by May for the new administration, and for the time being, it's just work in progress. So officers can look into cost implications and what the best solution is going to be.
Thank you very much.
Can I just be a little sort of more specific on that one? You're absolutely right. I'm not countering what Councillor Guglielmi said at all. But in terms of one of the specifics is around how you're able to access as an alternative. So going about your business as a councillor, you have that access. So the reason we haven't put a time on that is just working through the logistics and the cost of that. And it's basically when you do your banking, you do an app, and you put in a code each time and then you can access it. And that is basically looking at how we do that. And it was discussed as a subsequent meeting so that members who work in a variety of different ways, and we as officers are really conscious that you as members have jobs, have lives. So sometimes we, not always, and it's, it can be 5-7 days, whatever, even when you're on holiday or whatever, you're in contact, and it's the different ways. But set against that £8.4 million cost for a council, which is there. So how do we make it safe, but maximise what your work is? And actually, that was even since the piece of work which Councillor Clifton led on is around sort of talking this out. So yes, you're right. There's not a specific date on that one, and we are concerned about the auto forwarding. That don't get no bones about that. But I think that if we can introduce the app, which actually gives you that, there's a cost to it. As Councillor Guglielmi said, there is a cost to it, but actually it's not 8.4 million. So you kind of like balance that off. So what I'd say is that is something which we'll keep updated. And if I may, as soon as we've got some more detail, if that's all right with Councillor Guglielmi, we will get something round to you outside of the meeting thing, just so you're kept up to date. Very conscious of it, very conscious of the security thing, and it is very high on our agenda. The general public, they're thinking, why are they just talking about how councillors get an email or not? Obviously, we know in terms of security, which is really important, but also your access to be able to do your role is really important.
Yeah, thanks, Ian.
Just a tiny little thing, just as an admin thing. We put proposal recommendations A to J. Carlo's sheet has only referred to A to I. He has covered J, but can we move it in respect to committee's recommendations, H to J? You just haven't covered J.
Yeah, that's because it's work in progress.
Okay, but it was reference to the recommendation. Thanks.
Just on J, I mean, I was at a meeting last night and I actually said, I bet you that one disappears, and anyway, but that's another thing. No, there's a lot of things I wanted to say, but this was when this come up to a packed resource committee that night, and a long one. I think all the members just listened, and everyone was interested in how it would come across. And I think there was no criticism at all on any of the items. It was just perhaps a few comments. So I'd like to, again, I mean, his halo must be getting tighter and tighter at the moment. Is the chairman, Paul Clifton, but also the whole of that task force group and the officers that put this together. I mean, John, the officer really worked with them, and it pays dividends, and it is great. And all I would ask again is that the councillors are all saying you've got to do this, but also the council must also be aware of the hardware they buy. If you notice in Canada, Australia, America, they're all looking at what's supplied by China and places like that. They've proved it on the CCTV that all these things being sold have got back doors on. Our company only install ones that don't have them, but that's what happens, and it's quite easy. So yes, as if you run a business, nearly every business has been hit by something along the line. And we need to be so cautious because, as I say, everyone should always be taught to be cautious. Thank you.
Sorry, just to just been reminded, and of course members can. So auto forwarding will continue because we're looking at the app and sorting that through, and the decision around the spend will come forward. But members can opt out of auto forwarding as well if they so wish on that one. But we're not automatically switching that off at this stage.
Okay, thanks for that. Some good comments there. Are you happy to agree the recommendation? Yeah, it's been agreed. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 13, which is Jaywick, and that is in the hands of Mary Newton.
Beg your pardon, I'll start again. As Cabinet are aware, the covered market and managed workspace facility at Jaywick Sands is in the process of being built and is due for completion this summer. Although a Cabinet decision was made in October 2021 to outsource the management of the building, for reasons explained in the report, circumstances have now changed, so it is no longer possible. Can you not hear me? No, can you just beg your pardon? Is that better for everybody? Yeah. Can you hear? Yeah. Okay. I'll start that paragraph again. As a result, it is now recommended to bring the operation of the building in-house to be run by staff directly employed by the council. Further to this, we are looking to work with partners to bring in short-term management support for the operation of the centre, with the option to continue with the reduced support service after an initial 7-month period has expired. This will be funded by budgets already allocated to this project. The suggested approach will ensure that the council retains control of this important project, but recognises that support from partners is required to ensure success in specialist areas such as the letting of the commercial workspace in delivering a successful outcome. This project will support the local economy, increasing opportunities for local entrepreneurship and grow and retain economic activity, job creation in the local area, and this is the most deprived in the country. I recommend this report to Cabinet.
Yes, Chairman, I'm happy to second this recommendation. I think it's the right thing to do to bring this in-house, particularly in the current financial climate. It means that there is someone close by that can respond to any concerns or issues and can react to those. So I'm 100% supportive of this recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you, Paul. It does seem with the microphones that you need it pointing directly at your mouth. They're very directional. The difference it made, Mary, when it was sort of back there compared to there is terrific. So they've obviously got a very narrow cone of reception. We've got on this item recommendations been moved and seconded. Basically, Colby were going to be running it. They've had a change of management. They don't want to run it anymore, and we're going to be running it ourselves, but working with them on it. I think I just did a very quick and dirty précis then. Any comments, Mark?
Thank you, Chairman. My first question on this was, why is the HRA paying? But that was actually answered on page 251. So I'm just curious, why do we not just move the whole thing into the general fund rather than keep recharging it to the HRA? Thank you.
It's complicated.
So I'll do my best, as Richard Barrett's not able to be here today, but we do work quite closely on this, and it is complicated. So the land that was purchased in Jaywick for that within that area was purchased using the housing revenue account, because there was a vision, a strategy for increasing housing within the area. So when you purchase land within the housing revenue account, you can only use it for specific purposes. When the Jaywick Market Workspace project materialised, because it was sat in the housing revenue account, we had to apply to the Secretary of State for permission to be able to use the land for non-housing purposes. The Secretary of State gave us that permission, but obviously then there are still accounting requirements in relation to what's still sitting on the land. The way that I try to think about it, in my simplistic terms. It's like when you purchase land for a housing estate and then you set up a parade of shops within that housing estate. So part of it will be in the general fund, part of it will be in the HRA, and then the accountants sort it out where it goes from there. But that's about as simple as I can explain it.
That's good enough for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's the it's the status update on that one. I do remember it because we had to make all these decisions back, I think, May 21, about going ahead with this project, but it's all subject to the Secretary of State agreeing that we'd be allowed to change the, well, to use the land that was essentially housing land for non-housing usage. And I think it was originally housing, bought in the housing revenue account because the whole area was designated housing originally, but it does get very complicated. Anyway, I've muddied the waters at least, we're cleared there probably. All said exactly the same thing at best, at very best. But Alex.
I was just going to say I wasn't going to say about microphones, but I find it incredibly difficult to hear anything when anyone, they sort of echo around the room and it reverberates and it's almost impossible to hear. But I think I've said before about this, that obviously the Sunspot used to be there years ago, which I used to go down to for a breakfast, and you had the funny little market and stuff. And it was, it was really quite popular before it went. It was actually quite a nice looking building, but hopefully this will, replace that with some businesses and cafes, whatever ends up in it. And it's a successful, development of that site, because it's nice to see things going there that are fresh and new, and not just leaving places abandoned. And hopefully, it's a real benefit for Jaywick and Tendring as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. This is progress. I found that throughout the meeting, I've been able to hear myself okay, which is, I think, is the main thing. But it does seem to vary the quality, and I think it depends where you're sitting in the room as to what acoustics you're getting, probably. But anyway, Carlo.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm told that everyone is able to hear when I say something, especially me. Yeah, Chairman, this is a great outcome, really. If you cast your mind back and you turn the clock back to when we started to where we are now, I've taken great delight to pop down there and seen the steel go up, and all the obstacles that were thrown in our way, the asbestos and the spiralling cost. And I remember Councillor Honeywood's comments a couple of years ago when we first approved this, 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was. If it was easy, we'd have done it long before now. This is one of the actions that we have taken to address the most deprived ward in the country at the time, and it's going to be something that to be really, really proud of. The fact that we will be taking ownership of running the place is the icing on the cake, as far as I'm concerned. I was disappointed that Colbia decided not to get involved for whatever reason, which I still struggle to understand. That I think by running it ourselves, we will retain ownership, we'll control who goes in and out, we will make sure that there will be no favoritism, that the process will be transparent, and we will support those people that really could do with opportunities such as this, of a reasonable place where to trade, and to people are already doing that without the sites. So now they've got perfect sites to do all their activities. And it goes hand in hand with the previous paper that we've approved on the supplementary planning document. There's huge amount of work this council's done to address the situation in Jaywick, and I think we will be leaving this administration feeling that we've done all we could to address and to promote diversity and to promote economic growth down there, which at one stage, when I first arrived there, I walked around there back in 2009, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So it's a different place. We've injected a huge amount of positivity and hope there for the future. And I congratulate all of those that, especially our officers, have put huge amount of work into achieving this.
Yeah, well said, Carlo. Okay, well, it's been moved and seconded. Be happy to agree that. Thank you. That is agreed. Next item is Carlo, and it's changes to the Constitution on page 265.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The Constitution Review Working Party met for the final time on the 23rd of January. in this very room to complete and agree this year's review. Following the Cabinet input on the motions at the meeting on the 16th of December, you remember we decoupled the motions until we had a further discussion on it. That took place on the 23rd of January, and the group has now agreed the wording. We had a very good discussion on it, and this will be presented at the March meeting next month. It was all agreed that as and when any questions for council come forward, which for whatever reasons cannot be dealt with or answered, there will be the written response will also be published on the website, as well as being circulated to members. This is the current practice. Finally, the group considered the results of a member survey on planning site visits. The outcome was very much to keep the status quo as it is at the moment, but a full council meeting in March, the monitoring officer would include changes and clarification on the procedure, specifically on lobbying, the role of the chairman in managing visits, the use of a drone, mandatory training to name subs and non-members of the councils, and finally, the most important one for site visit chairman, having been tripped around the bus and having been the instigator of the bus in 2013, a reminder to members that when they do undertake site visits, they've got to have a much stricter compliance with the protocol of these visits, not to stray off, not to engage with agent, not to engage with applicants, and that's why the lobbying request for the monitoring officer to put some clear definition it's been put forward, and to remain in a group under the chairman's supervision at all times. Now, that's like I said, having been on site visit myself, that's never been the case, and you know, it's you know, it was very timely that a tumultuous event provoked this review, but I think it's given an opportunity to address all these concerns, and hopefully going forward we'll be in a much better place.
Thank you, Carlo. I'll second that item. Just speak briefly to the site visits, because I was one of the members who sort of questioned whether we were doing the right thing, because I was aware of, I'd seen emails and Facebook listings where parish councils or objectors would say, oh, the councillors are coming to a site visit, this is your chance to go and lobby them and tell them why they shouldn't build it. And I can understand why people think that, and it is, I think, our duty, responsibility to make sure that people understand that isn't what the purpose of a site visit is. I don't think site visits need to be made publicly available. And whilst you're quite right that members of the planning committee don't want to be seen to be having a detailed conversation with the applicant, frankly, they don't want to be seen to be having a conversation with anyone, because you don't know, people don't know who the applicant is. You might be having a conversation with someone who thinks an objector as a member of the committee. It turns out they're not an objector. They actually are the applicant or the agent or the applicant's sister. And there's this perception thing. And I'm afraid as members of the planning committee, you have to be, you know, better than better, don't you? You have to be beyond suspicion and beyond perception. So the thing to do, I'm afraid, is to speak to nobody outside. I know it's a terribly dull thing to do, because we all tend to be somewhat gregarious and we like to meet new and interesting people. That's part of our role of being a councillor. But I think that is important. And I think it's important that we either keep the dates much more confidential, we don't make them so publicly available, or we do at least make it clear that there is not an opportunity to lobby members, and that members will be under instruction not to engage with members of the public, because they won't know whether those members of the public are an objector, a parish councillor, or the applicant, or anyone else in between. So I think it's very important. Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. I'll fully endorse this. This has been needed for a little while. I spent a lot of time on a planning committee, as you know, and you never really know who you're going to walk into, who's going to approach you, who's going to try and have a conversation with you. And having the sort of backup to say, no, actually, I'm absolutely not allowed to speak to you, is very, very important. I think the point you made towards the end there about publicising when and where site visits are taking place is also an issue. We live in a world where security is a problem. Basically, we have a coach running around with 9 or 10 councillors and several officers, and everybody knows where it is. So it's a situation I think that we need to keep very much in mind. So I welcome this. I think it's absolutely excellent, and there's more to do. Thank you.
Yeah, I welcome the comments from Councillor Guglielmi and Councillor Bray. Back in the day when I was chair and of planning, and we used to go on site visits, we used to be inundated with people turning up randomly, parish councillors, members of the public, and councillors then back in the day were feel intimidated with people turning up en masse, lobbying and things. I also want to know. I know Councillor Guglielmi mentioned about people turning up. I assume the chairman of the planning committee, when he does the site visit, allows ward members to say things at site visits, or is that still the current policy of allowing, or is it not going to be happening anymore? What I would be also like to say is when an application comes up in any councillor's ward, I'd be interested. I know we get notification from Democratic Services there's going to be a site visit coming to your ward. Be interested also maybe an agenda sent through the post to the said councillor or the ward. So I have to, when I find out there's an item in my ward, I then have to ask for an agenda to be sent to me, or I come and ask for one here if I'm at TDC. But I was wondering whether that could be the policy going down the road. If an application turns up in the council ward for that agenda gets sent, like if it sends to other councillors on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. If I may, thank you, Councillor Scott, for your question. A couple of things there. One is the ward member attendance. I think the ward member input is at the committee when the application is heard. As you know, we extended the time for the ward member to speak, so we'll have 5 minutes to address committee. It will be improper if anyone lobbied councillors on the site visits. I think the site visits, the idea when I introduced mandatory site visits, also members make themselves aware of what the surroundings are, not to be lobbied by anyone. You know, that is the number one rule that I really would like to really come loud and clear out of this review. The ward member's got a place to address committee in the evening. He can write to all the members of the committee, including making sure you include officers in it. There are various ways, but at the site visit, it would be the wrong place to engage with members of the committee because it just looks bad. You know, if we're going to stop members of the public and members of the parish councils and other people to engage with the planning committee, it would be wrong for any members of the council, let alone the ward member, to engage. So that's number one. Number two is that we all get our weekly planning application list every Monday, so you know what's coming up in your ward. There are the we all get a link to .gov for the agendas. So to start sending agenda out to everyone would be quite cumbersome. And you know, if you really want an agenda, get in touch with the market services, and they'll send you one. So, but I think really the protocol is there, it exists. It just needs to be enacted upon, and the roles of the chairman is going to be much greater in ensuring that the site visits, because the alternative is to just have drone footage of it all, save ourselves quite a lot of money by stopping doing the site visits, and you know, really. They were introduced for a reason. They were introduced to enable members of the committee not to be challenged, so they were aware of what they were debating and what they were voting on for the evening. So therefore, that really is. So I hope I've made sense.
Thank you, Councillor Guglielmi. I welcome the point about the genders. I welcome that. The bit I'm still unsure about and uneasy about is over all the years I've been a district councillor, the chairman of the planning committee, whether it's Councillor Gordon Jessup, Councillor Rosemary Heaney, we always asked, or myself always asked the ward member, when there was a plan application in Crockle Heath many years ago, Councillor Stock came along and I was chair of the planning committee at the time, and I gave the opportunity for councillors to speak at the site visit because it's still part of the meeting, I believe, and I really think it's important that ward councillors can say something at the site visit. And I think Councillor White, when he came to my ward some time ago, Councillor White gave me the option of you're the ward member. Is there anything you want to say at the site visit? I would like that to continue. Now you're saying it's not going to continue.
Well, Chairman, I think without prolonging the discussion here, I think we are looking to ensure that the system is fit for purpose and it's very clear to everyone. Up until now, that wasn't clear. The protocol clearly states that no lobbying should be taking place in the site visit. So therefore, any member, any ward member has got the ability of lobbying. Every member of the committee, like I've done in the past, I've emailed people around, you know, whether it's worked or not is by the by, but you've done that for your own purposes and to represent your residents. So the site visits should be there just for information for the members of the planning committee only, because a ward member, we extended the time of when the ward member can speak from 3 to 5 minutes. In fact, we introduced first the trial to be unlimited, and it didn't work, so we limited to 5 minutes. And I'm looking at Councillor Baker there. Not that he was the transgressor. But yeah, and I think it's to really make it look a lot more professional and stop the nonsense that happened in that site visit in September last year. I think you'll find that going forward, when people get their head around it, it'll be a much more streamlined process and much more professional.
That goes to committee has a site visit now. The vast majority of them pass off without incident, and it's not a problem. But it's just those one or two, the big controversial, ugly ones, if you like, that cause problems, and we want to avoid scenarios there. Linda, you indicated to speak ages ago.
Yes, if you don't mind, please, Chairman. Having been involved with so many applications recently within one of my villages, but I have to be honest, years ago, and that is years ago, when I first attended planning meetings, it was always without any question, nobody said anything. It was always with the chairman and the developer. It was never as the way it has been in more recent years. So I have to say, I totally agree with the changes. It makes a lot of difference. And also, at one of the meetings recently, the chairman asked me if I would like to speak to it. I said, no, I'd rather leave it until the evening. I'd much rather leave those comments until the evening when you're the one individual at that particular point. So, yeah, I totally agree. And I support the application.
Can I just get Lisa to come back in quickly? I'll come to you in a second,
Andy. What I was going to say is that following the meeting, I mean, the recommendation obviously to go on to full council as well is that to review the protocol in light of the comments made by the Constitution Working Party. But I think it's imperative probably that we recirculate the planning code and protocol round to all councillors as a reminder of what it says. It has been in place since 2018. We, as part of the, members and officers as part of the Constitution Review Working Party have looked at that protocol. We did a survey out to all councillors requesting comments. Those comments went back to the Working Party. They were taken into account. And the very, very strong feeling was that the protocol says what needs to be done, what is best practice and how it should be followed. What we need to do is to make sure that it is followed. So the comments around the room are highlighting that maybe need to raise awareness with all councillors, and we'll get it also sent out, I think, to town and parish councils to remind them what it says as well. Personally, with regards to the members of the public being encouraged to attend site visits, that should be discouraged by the ward councillors and town and parish councils that do it, because there is a health and safety risk there. And if, as a member of public, you receive something from a councillor or a town and parish council to say, you know, come along and have your say, you're going to be quite upset if you turn up and you can't. We need to manage those expectations and comply with our own policy that we've set down. But I'll get it circulated out to all members so you can see what it says.
Yeah, just to be pedantic, we introduced the protocol in 2013 and it was reviewed twice. Last time it was reviewed in 2018, as monitoring officers just said. The rules were always there. They're just not being observed. That's as simple as that. And, it is the point that Ms. Hastings has made about discouraging people to come along is a very, very valid one, because people will feel deprived of their rights if they suddenly turn up, make the time to attend a site visit, and sometimes the bus is running late and you get there and you have to wait, hang around for a bit and get frustrated, and then you can't even speak, then it makes things even worse. But I think the chairman has got to take real strict control of the thing, and if the situation arises that he needs to pull people back on the bus, then he will have to do that.
Yeah, I'd also question whether publishing the date and time of the site visit is necessary, whether that should be on a need to know basis, quite frankly. And I think it should be on a need to know basis. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chairman, for letting me address you. I've sat on planning for over 6 years, if you discount the break, shall we say. And this particular incident is the first time anything like that's ever happened. The site visit wasn't planned as well as it could have been, and that's no criticism of officers or the chairman. But as Councillor Guglielmi has said, the chairman leads the committee, and we do need to be very robust in how we deal with site visits, how we conduct ourselves on site visits, and all members of the committee need to be reminded on a frequent basis, I would say at the beginning of each morning that we go on a site visit, what the protocol actually says, because sometimes we do split away and it shouldn't be done. And unfortunately, in that instance, obviously we were split up because we were walking between A to B, which didn't work. But like I say, I just like to stress it's one instance. So, most site visits go swimmingly well and we don't see anybody, which makes it nice and quick. And I'd just like to reiterate publicly that they are site visits to the site, to look at the site, not to discuss, which does happen on occasion. Thank you, Chairman.
For the insight, that is useful. Mark.
Be glad to know I won't be talking about planning. I actually just wanted to talk about the actual scrutiny, the working party itself, and I waited until the end of these ones before I said it. So big thanks to Carlo for his working party. It's actually one of my favourite meetings, and people can call me weird or bizarre for that, but it is. But unfortunately, in November, I wasn't able to attend the first meeting of this year's one, and I substituted it with Councillor Baker, and I said, as long as Carlo says this shouldn't take too long, you'll be fine. Clearly he did, and that just makes things very, very long. But I just wanted to give a big nod to our officers as well, Lisa, Miss Hastings, and Mr. Ford, who I think when we're in that meeting should be retitled the constitutional historian, because if he doesn't know it, it doesn't really meriting. And it's an excellent committee, and I endorse everything. And the only problem you've now left me with is that Andy liked it so much that next year, if things stay the same, we're going to have to arm wrestle for who sits on it, and I don't fancy my chances. Thank you very much.
And if I was just about to say that, you might have lost your seat on there. Chairman, looking back, it was the first multi-political working group that the council set up. This was set up in 2012, and if you remember, one of the Labour representative was an ex-chief executive, and he automatically went on the defences. Why do you want to set up a constitutional review working party? So well, and 3 hours later, I think I convinced him that was a good thing to do. But it has evolved. It has involved all the group leaders, more or less, really, the representation on the working party, and it's produced excellent work right through, and it's been a forum where, as you say, won't take long, 3 hours later, still there discussing the things, but that's the beauty of it. Everybody's got their say, so the time to come up and have their opinion, and wherever I could, I've always taken comments on board and they're reflected in the final recommendation. So it's been a great honour for me to have chaired it all this year, and let's hope it continues. But that's for depending what happens in May, isn't it?
Well, quite. But thanks for that. Okay. Been moved and seconded. We happy to agree that. Well done. The last item today is item 15. It's the annual capital and treasury strategy. Carlo.
Yes, Chairman, I don't normally say too much about this because I normally use this when I suffer from insomnia and I read it to make me go to sleep. But on a serious note, approving this strategy this year, it's very, very important for several reasons. So if you allow me a couple of minutes, I'm delighted to present this version of the annual cabinet strategy, treasury strategy, to cabinet for submission to council next month. You might recall 5 years ago, the two strategies had been combined in one document, and this is still the case. The document sets out how the council will manage its investment and any potential borrowing. Because of pressure, workload, and the meeting and the 1st of April deadline for the strategy to be put in place, it has not been possible to get the comments from the Overview Scrutiny Committee and Mark, Councillor Stevens there nodding before today. But I'm keen that this is done as soon as practically possible in the new, soon after that it's approved. And if the committee has any comments to make or a recommendation, they will be incorporated later on in the year, especially because of the changes that we're introducing, not our own changes, the changes that we're duty bound to introduce. The amendments are following the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, known as CIPFA, introduce a new Treasury Management Code of Practice and a revised Prudential Code. These were published in the end of 2021, and the introduction was always going to be 1st of April 2023. I will list them, Chairman, because they're quite relevant and they're quite different. First, the local authorities must have a clear definition of investment, which must be split in treasury, commercial and service investment. In our case, we only have one commercial investment and no service investments. Second, local authorities are no longer allowed to borrow to invest for financial return. Third, local authorities must have considered divesting any commercial investment before deciding to borrow. Fourth, the introduction of liability benchmark, which shows approved capital programs and maturity of approved borrowing. Fifth, the introduction of a new affordability indicator, which will show the net revenue split between service and commercial investment. Again, in our case, we've only got one commercial investment and no service investments. Sixth, the inclusion of the council policies and practice for environmental, social and government investment consideration within the Treasury Management Policies 1 for risk management. Seventh, several wording changes throughout the strategy, introducing the new codes and amendments to the general economic outlook and interest rate forecast. The final code is around reporting treasury activity quarterly, which we already do. All the changes have been graded, have been shaded in grey throughout the strategy, so they're easy to pick up. And I'd like to reassure everyone that none of these codes have had any impact on the way that the council's operated and managed all these activities. We continue to maintain a very low risk approach, as this has been the case historically, but nevertheless, our very wise and shrewd finance team will continue to produce a very welcome income to our revenue, especially when interest rates are what they are at the moment. Government has already introduced a significant constraint in 2021 on borrowing from the Public Work Loan Board, if the purpose is for generating investment income. Unfortunately, some authorities have already committed, and if anyone still has any question on THAREC and the money this council has lent to them, I will direct them to page 284. So I will commend this strategy to Cabinet Chairman, and hopefully full council will give its full backing in March. Thank you.
Interesting. Actually, some of that was quite interesting. Some of it. It is actually quite interesting. Some of the rules that are coming in there. Any comments on it, or shall we agree this one and put it to bed? Right, that is agreed. Thank you very much. And with that is the end of the meeting. Thank you everyone for